People who throw rocks don't know God. Hey, my name is Brian. Welcome to my garage Bible study. Have we ever lived in a time when people throw more rocks than they do today? By rocks, I'm talking about throwing stones at other people, throwing comments that hurt other people, throwing situations at other people, throwing judgments at one another. Man, the level of hurling of objects, hurling of insults, hurling of things that are unhealthy is at an all-time high, at least here in my life. And we can learn something from an instant in the life of Jesus. Now, when I share this today, it's from looking at John 8. So if you want to turn there, you can go to John 8 with me. You might find in your Bible, above it, it says, it might say a little thing of, this is not found in the earliest manuscripts. There's some debate over whether or not this should be actually included in John, since it wasn't found in the earliest manuscripts. But it's in a lot of manuscripts, maybe just not the earliest ones. And sometimes the earliest ones aren't necessarily the most accurate ones. And the people who were scribing these things, that is, writing and copying these things down, they put this in here, if not because they knew for sure that this had actually happened, but because early followers of Christ were like, well, that's exactly something that Jesus would do. That's exactly him. So I take this as literal and historic, and I think you will too, just because we get blessed by it. It's just like, that's exactly the kind of God I want to follow. So here's what happens. John chapter 8, verse 3. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and placed her in the midst. And they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" They say this, it says, to trap him. They said this to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. And let's just stop there. Charge to bring against him. Whenever religious people ask Jesus a question, it's very rarely because they're trying to get enlightenment. They're trying to paint him into a corner. I find today there's very few people who ask questions today. We ask questions to prove our point. We ask questions that are rhetorical to back somebody into a corner, because we know what we believe, we know what we want, and we just need validating opinions. That's why we have the clamping down on free speech. It's on college campuses, it's online. It's like, no, let's not let people say what they want to say, because I don't really want to hear anything that I disagree with. This is human condition. It's always been around. And the religious people at the time of Jesus were trying to protect their turf. They're trying to protect their salary. There's this upstart rabbi who teaches better than they do and has power that they don't have. And they're trying to catch him in dishonoring the Bible, their Old Testament scriptures, so they can say, look, get away. And Moses comes around, and there's some things that Moses said in the law way back in the early part of the Bible, but was written in a cultural time where Moses, through the direction of God, was pushing things forward, but he wasn't going as far as God would ultimately go in the thousands of years in the future as the canon was formed. This is called progressive revelation. God starts in one area where people is, and then he develops us through. There's concubines. Many of the Bible heroes in the Old Testament have concubines. God never said, have concubines is a good idea. He was just silent on it. And then as time went by, he was bringing more changes and more changes and more changes. He was much more clear about some of the sexual ethics that were taking place. They're trying to pin it down that since Moses didn't say we shouldn't do this, and Moses had some pretty harsh things to say about people who were having adultery, are you saying you don't believe in Moses? Are you saying you're trying to write your own Bible? They're trying to pin him and catch him in something. The problem with these guys is they always forget that Jesus is always the smartest person in the room. Always is. He's not just the most powerful, not just the most winsome, not just the best communicator. He's always the smartest person in the room. So let's see how Jesus answers this. As they continue to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." This is brilliant. So Jesus is not going to contradict the Bible. He's going to say, hey, you want the Bible? Let's have the whole Bible. So, those of you who've never broken anything in the Bible, you're qualified, you're uniquely qualified. Why don't you throw the first stone at her? And once more he bent down and he wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with a woman standing before him. There's things in the Bible we just don't know. After he says, whoever's without the first stone, who's ever without sin, you can throw the first stone, you're uniquely qualified. He bends down, starts drawing in the dirt. We don't know what it is. Is he just doodling in the dirt because he's passing time and waiting for the question to sink into their minds? Maybe it's less awkward to look down at the ground and toy with the ground instead of ask the question and just stare at people. You? Some people say maybe he's down and he's writing people's sins in the dirt. I know you, Joachim. Yeah, let's see here. Let's see. Lust. I saw you looking at Rebecca over there. Maybe he's writing that. We don't know. But we do know is they go away from the oldest to the youngest. Maybe it's because the older you are, the more sin you have in your life, and the easier it is for you to remember, yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. Yeah, because the older you are, the longer you've been around to do wrong things. Maybe it's because the older you are, the more humble you are, the more you get kicked around. I find that's been happening with me. I've just taken a lot of body blows and gotten kicked around in the latter years of my life, whereas when I was in my 20s, I was full of piss and vinegar, and I thought everything I thought was right, and I had the ability to say whatever I wanted to say and deal with the consequences. I just, just much more idealistic and matter of fact. And then life just grabs you by the throat and it brings some sensibility into you, and you're just like, okay, I don't think I want to throw a rock at this woman. Oldest to the youngest. Sorry to tell you, if you're younger, you're not as good as you think you are. I know, shocking. You're not as good as you think you are. You're not as qualified as you think you are. You're not as smart as you think you are. You're not as holy as you think you are. You're not as spiritual as you think you are. But even these folks, they come to realize, not as quickly as the older folks, but yeah, I flipped somebody off last week while I was on my camel. This other fast camel, I flipped somebody, yeah. And they all start dropping their rocks one by one. Jesus looks at this woman and says, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" No one, including the only person who was qualified to throw a rock. That would be Jesus, because Jesus is fully God, fully man at the same time. He's the one person who's never sinned. He's the one person who had the spiritual qualifications, because he had never sinned before, to throw it at this woman. But he says to her, "Neither do I." That's what he says. Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go from now on and sin no more." Go and sin no more. There's an old Rebecca St. James song, old, like at least 20 years old. Go and sin no more. If you want to find that in Spotify, it's not that bad. Go and sin no more. Jesus doesn't just choose to not throw the rock, but he wants to have a sober, understanding conversation with her. He wants to tell her, okay, you got a fresh start here. You need to re-up your motivation to live a God-honoring life. Both of these things are true. You're forgiven, I judge you not, and you need to up your spiritual game. Go and sin no more. And we're going to sin again. We're going to sin again. And all these people who were there, you know that they made previous resolutions or commitments. I'm not going to do that sin again. I'm not going to do that. And they've broken them again and again and again and again. You know they've done that, but yet you come to a place where you go, okay, I have to find a place of grace and forgiveness and ask God for that. Good, God, I'm going to make a fresh resolution. I'm not going to do that again. Both of those things need to go hand in hand for you. For you. This isn't about you judging what a preacher does or doesn't say or judging somebody else. This is for you. Are you accepting the grace of God? I find some people are not willing to accept the grace of God. They want God to throw rocks at them. That shows how small their God is. If you're throwing rocks at somebody else, your God is not a God of grace. And if you expect God to throw rocks at you, your God is a God of vindictive punishment. That's not who God is. He chooses not to throw rocks and to tell us Go and sin no more. You do that now. We'll see you next time on My Garage Bible Study.